Good morning and welcome back to Weekend Express. This morning, we're getting up close and personal with Moses Barago, who is the running mate to independent presidential candidate Joseph Nyaga. Thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Express.
Thank you too.
Well, speaking of the first question, who is Moses Barago?
Thank you. Moses Barago is a Kenyan by birth. I was born in Kenya, in Bungoma, 39 years ago. And schooled in a school called Kimwanga Primary in Bungoma. Went to French school, Kamsinga for my high school. Then went to JKUAT, that's the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. And then at the university, I was involved in several programs, including student leadership, where I was elected first in my second year as the academic secretary. And then as a result of that, I worked as a member of the University Senate, then also as the 844 Review Commissioner, JKUAT chapter, and I don't know if you remember this Dr. Debbie Koech with the time he was,
right.
And then thereafter, the year after that, I was elected as the chairman of the union of the students' organization, and then by virtue of that, I became a member of the University Council, and then retained the position of being a member of the University Senate. And then also one time I became a student representative at the Loans Board. Then beyond that, after graduating from the university, I did several businesses in town. I taught several colleges here in town. Then in 2003, I left the country for my further studies. I went to the United States for my further studies. I spent about 9 years. But then around 2007, I got involved in politics back home in Bumula constituency. I was running for parliamentary on a Ford Kenya ticket in Bumula, but Mwalimu Wakoli before he beat me to that.
Right, and that was in 2007.
That's 2007.
And you did not give up your political ambition after that?
No, I did not. And then in 2013, I was the ODM candidate in Bumula constituency. Now, I looked at how party members were being handled during the primaries, during the nomination processes. Then I decided from the word go that come 2017, God willing, if I were to be still alive, and I thank God I am, that I was going to be running as an independent candidate.
Right. Why, first of all, that move from Ford Kenya to ODM?
Well, as a Ford Kenya aspirant at that time, the chairman of Ford Kenya in Bungoma County at that time was one of my opponents. So I didn't think we were going to get a fair nomination process at the time. Now, shifting to ODM would not have as many aspirants as possible, but then we thought it was going to be more democratic, and indeed it was, because I actually went in unopposed at that time. That's 2013. Now, after 2013, what I experienced as a party aspirant in Bungoma County motivated me to decide that 2017, I was going to be running as an independent candidate, and that's what I did.
What was the experience like in 2013?
Well,
and especially just having moved from Ford Kenya to ODM once again, was it just influenced by the fact that the chairman of Ford Kenya at the time was your opponent? Because there's questions of ideology. Were you subscribing to Ford Kenya because of a particular ideology?
Yes.
Did you move to ODM because of the ideologies, or was it just a special purpose vehicle at the time?
Well, besides ideologies, also as a politician, I also rely on party structures to do my campaigns. Now, there are certain regions in this country, we may not be told, but there are certain regions, according to my perception, I discovered in 2013 that areas considered to be, for example, ODM strongholds will end up, even though by then we were in CORD, even though they would receive serious attention from ODM party, other parties like Ford Kenya that were members of the CORD could be very mild in their supporting of their candidates in those areas considered ODM strongholds. And that is actually what we also went through in Bungoma County. The ODM party did not receive as much party support compared to the Ford Kenya party, because it was then considered Ford Kenya stronghold. So I decided that it looks like, even though we have certain ideologies that will put us in a position to help our people, but at the end of the day, party politics come into play. And you must have seen what has happened even in the recent nomination processes, where particular preferred candidates get to win because for particular reasons. So in 2017, I decided I was going to be running as an independent candidate in Bumula constituency, which I did. I even put in my papers until I came in contact with Honorable Joseph Nyaga.
Right.
Then I listened to Joseph Nyaga talk. I looked at his biography. I did some background check on him. Then I discovered, well, this country has some very smart people, very patriotic people who have worked in government for as long as over 30 years, yet they do not have a single scandal. And that was very key for me, that he is somebody who has been working in different levels of government and has been able to deliver on several occasions, yet he doesn't have a single scandal. Majority of the people in the country, somebody who has worked in the government for that particular long, he will probably have 1 or 2, 3 skeletons, scandals. And I was like, no.
He doesn't have any.
He doesn't have any.
But just again, going back to the issue and the question of ideology, you at the time were or had just decamped from ODM, or a former CORD member for that matter. He at the time was the president's advisor.
Yes.
Am I not wrong? And so, in terms of ideology and conflict of interest, was that there?
I don't think there was. Having spoken to His Excellency Joe Nyaga, our next president, there's one thing that became very apparent. When you're playing an advisor role, you do not have the authority to make decisions. So if I'm advising Michelle that something you're doing is wrong, for example, the cost of living is so high, you need to work on several, cut down the cartels, remove these cartels from government, and you're not acting, if you're head of government, I'll finally quit. And that is what Honorable Joe Nyaga did, because he spent time guiding government on how to get things done right, and the government failed to take up his advice. So it was prudent upon him to decide, no, I mean, enough is enough. I've said what needs to be said, and nothing's being done, so I better go in. I know what needs to be done. I do it myself.
Right. Let's talk track record, because you have contested for the Bumula constituency parliamentary seat twice, or thrice, is it?
Yes, yes.
And of course, you did not succeed because of all the issues that you have talked about, especially political interference and party politics.
Yes.
But what gives you, what makes you the person to run this country as the deputy president with your track record? Because we haven't seen what you've done, at least at the constituency level.
Number one, there are certain things that you do not need experience before you know that you are able to perform. There is a passion that somebody has, particularly like myself. What I believe I can get done. Number one, Wanjiku is suffering. There's local people suffering. The people's cost of living are going high. If I'm able to influence a change in lifestyle for these people, for them to be able to afford common commodities in the country, that would be very key for me.
Right.
And I thought about it. I realized that instead of just creating change and improving lives of people, about 100,000 people in Bumula constituency, or maybe about 120,000, why wouldn't I, if I have an opportunity to influence 45 million lives positively and improve their lifestyle so that the country gets a better life? That was actually a better motivation for me.
I want to get into your manifesto and the unique aspects of your manifesto in just a moment. But let's talk about the politics still involved in this, especially your duo with Joseph Nyaga. He has been termed as a Jubilee project, especially following his political past.
Yes.
Your reaction to that?
Well, I don't know who called Joe Nyaga as a Jubilee project, because to the best of my memory, Joe Nyaga has served in Kanu. Joe Nyaga has served in the Grand Coalition government. He was a member of the Pentagon. Joe Nyaga has been in ODM. Joe Nyaga has been, actually, he has been entirely throughout the different governments. Right. But I'm aware that Jubilee people will easily brand Joe Nyaga as a NASA project, because they fear he's going to get the votes. NASA people will end up branding Joe Nyaga as a Jubilee project, because they know we are getting the votes.
Right.
This is one man who cuts across the board. When we go to the areas considered to be Jubilee strongholds, we get support. When we go to areas considered NASA strongholds, we get support. So both sides of the political divide are getting now concerned, because they know we are getting their votes.
Right.
And my objective as a politician is to win votes. So if I'm able to win votes from Jubilee and win votes from NASA, we form the government.
And you're rather optimistic about your candidature and your presidential bid for both of you. You've been quoted as saying that Joseph Nyaga will pull a surprise win in this year's general election. Looking at the current political dynamics, many would say that is not possible, especially running on an independent ticket. But what are these dynamics in the current political scene that you feel political pundits might not be aware of that will surprise Kenyans come August 8th?
Number one, we're aware that a lot of Kenyans, a majority of them, maybe Michelle, you are not one of them, but I think majority of Kenyans are very disappointed in the direction with which the government is, the country is going.
Right.
Number one, we have traversed the entire country. There are certain people, for example, who do not like the way the government is being run, especially people who come from the Jubilee areas considered Jubilee strongholds. These people don't want to vote Jubilee back, but they're also reluctant to support NASA. Now, what comes in as an alternative to this scenario, these are people who are quietly starting to gravitate towards the center point, who is Joseph Nyaga. There are people who are very disappointed with the way, for example, the Jubilee nominations were done. And these people cannot speak very openly, and we are calling upon them, take a stand and let the country know exactly what happened and why you think there has been mismanagement in the affairs, both of the country and that's of your party. So come out and speak. So what we are seeing is a situation where there's going to be a grand move out. And people are aware of that when we go to areas also considered to be NASA strongholds, there are a lot of people who are disappointed with the way these constituent parties are being managed. And these people have been quietly rumbling. So when we offer an articulate option that they can see is going to be it can work for them, these people are coming outside. And we talk to people on the ground. Nobody is satisfied with where they are, especially areas considered to be government affiliated.
All right, we're getting up close and personal with Moses Barago, who is the running mate to independent presidential candidate Joseph Nyaga. But just before we continue with this conversation, let's find out who Joseph Nyaga is. He wants to be the president of Kenya. Let's take a look at this a brief profile of Joseph Nyaga.
Joseph William Nyaga has a dream to become Kenya's 5th president. The eldest son of veteran politician, the late Jeremiah Nyaga, his entry into politics in the year 1997 may have been smooth for a man who succeeded his younger brother as Gashoka MP, a brother who had succeeded their father.
It had a smooth side because there was a brand name. There's no question I benefited. My brother Norman benefited from very good reputation that our father enjoyed, not only in Kenya, but nationally.
Considered one of the young Turks of the 1960s, his late father ventured into politics even before Kenya gained independence, being among the first Africans to serve in the pre-independence Legislative Council, where he represented Embu, Mbeere, and Kirinyaga from 1958. After independence, he served as a cabinet minister in the Jomo Kenyatta and later Daniel Moi governments, becoming one of the longest-serving ministers. But it was his grip on the larger Embu politics that may have shaped the Nyaga dynasty. In Parliament, Jeremiah Nyaga represented the larger Embu from 1958 to 1988, when it was divided into Runyenjes, Siakago, and Gashoka. He chose to vie for the Gashoka seat, one he held until 1992, when he bowed out of politics. His second-born son, Norman, took over. In the 1992 general election, vying on a DP ticket, he retained the seat his father held. In the 1997 election, Norman shifted his political base to Kamukunji, leaving his elder brother, Joseph Nyaga, to contest the Gashoka seat on a Kanu ticket. He won. He retained the seat in the 2002 polls after vying on a NAC ticket. But it was the 2007 election that ended the 49-year grip of the Nyaga family on Embu politics after he lost the Gashoka seat to Reverend Mutava Musiemi.
The reason I was thrown out of Mbeere South, then Gashoka constituency, was not because I was in ODM. It's because people were tired of why only one family? How come there's no other woman who can produce an MP in Gashoka in Mbeere South? That's how I lost my job.
He had shifted allegiance to ODM and vied for the Gashoka seat on an ODM ticket at a time when the region was rallying behind Mwai Kibaki of PNU.
Could be by being on the other side. In 2007 was a God-sent chance for the people on the PNU side to have a person who understands them, but on the other side.
However, Joseph Nyaga, who was a member of the ODM Pentagon, was nominated to Parliament by ODM. And after the power-sharing deal that saw Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga form a coalition government following the 2007 election, he was appointed Minister for Cooperatives. But he was not new to government. He had served in Daniel Moi's government before he quit the cabinet and the then ruling party KANU in the run-up to the 2002 election. Born in 1948, he had served as a managing director of Kenya Airways and ambassador to Belgium before venturing into politics. The Alliance Boys High School, Nairobi University, and Northwestern University in the US alumni is now back with a national agenda to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta after resigning as his advisor on regional affairs.
I think that's what I bring to the table. A confident, experienced, a man of high integrity, ready to be a servant leader of this country.
He has a promise to, among other things, initiate a tough war on corruption, ensure women get more than 50% of government positions, reduce public debt, and enhance food security.
I'm confident I'll be the third president who will be elected on the first attempt. The first was Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. The second was Mzee Moi. And the third is going to be Joseph William Nyaga.
As he tries his luck, Joseph Nyaga will go into Kenyan political history books as one of the first independent candidates to vie for the presidency. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
And here in studio, Joseph Nyaga's running mate, Moses Barago. Many thanks for staying on with us. So let's talk about your manifesto now and what you promised to do for Kenyans. Like you say, Kenyans and the electorate seem to be tired of what's going on in terms of the economy. But what makes you the best suited team to deliver that? Talk to us about your 3 key pledges.
Number 1, corruption will be a thing in the past in our government. We are aware that there are some government officials, very senior government officials, who have even spoken on a national TV that they know people who run cartels, corrupt cartels, but they're in government, they're not able to do a single thing to get rid of these people. We want to ensure that we run a government that puts the common mwananchi on the forefront. People be able to earn their livelihood without much struggle. For us to have people leaving schools and getting jobs immediately. We want to see how we can integrate this and ensure that our people are secure in this country. But very important for us is corruption must go away.
Now, let's not forget that that has been in the manifestos of all 8 presidential candidates as we speak.
Yes.
And the perception is the manifestos out there are great.
Yes.
Very well structured.
Yes.
But how do you deliver those manifestos? How do you plan to deliver that promise?
Exactly. That's why Joseph Nyaga comes in play. That for somebody to, for example, fight corruption, you must not have skeletons. Joseph Nyaga comes out as a man who has not been involved in corruption, even though he has been in government for quite a while. Most of these people in our competitors, they argue they'll fight corruption. They even pinpointing you are corrupt, another guy says you are corrupt. They know they are corrupt. They cannot fight corruption. And because of this corruption, the cost of living has gone up. Wanjiku cannot afford a packet of unga. You cannot commute from one place to another without spending too much from your pockets. Insecurity has increased. Our graduates are leaving universities. They can't get jobs because everywhere there is a corrupt cartel taking shape. So we want to make sure that in our government, we include everybody who is a Kenyan. Now, we include these people in our government, whether you are an Ogiek or from whatever community, from whatever family, provided you on merit, you qualify to become a member of our government. Now, based on that, we will look at somebody's track record. Do you have even a speck of a scandal or a track of any corrupt deal that you have been involved in? We knock you out. We want clean people who can serve in our government for the sake of Wanjiku.
One of the constraints to solving corruption in the country has been attributed to political financing and campaign financing.
Yes.
In the fact that after the financing, favors have to be repaid, and whatever agreements that were there before have to be delivered. In terms of your campaign financing with Joe Nyaga, have you been transparent enough about where that funding is coming from?
We have been very transparent, and anybody can look at our books of accounts. We've been very transparent, and I really don't think it's only the financing of the campaigns. I think is the investigative organs in the country, and then the prosecution of the people who are found to be corrupt or being involved in corruption that is not taking place. Because even if you were to sponsor somebody run for political office as a cartel, like another deputy president has claimed in a couple of days ago, if the country knows, if the government knows that you're sponsoring, you're a cartel, corrupt cartel sponsoring an election, then why don't the government agency responsible for investigating corruption take shape and then prosecute you? Especially, I'm the deputy president of a country, and I know there is somebody who is corrupt, is sponsoring an election campaign. Why should I not take a step and put this guy in court? People do not have political goodwill. And because of lack of political goodwill, we cannot make any progress, no matter how committed we may pretend to be. But now, that commitment is what comes from our end, and the political goodwill is what comes from our part of the town.
The structures when it comes to procurement and public service has also been attributed to corruption. Many of them being, many people saying that it's leeway, lots of gaps there for stealing public funds. So other than what you're going to do on the ground, in terms of structures, is there anything you're going to change? Because just recently we had President Uhuru Kenyatta say he's doing the best to fight corruption as the head of state. But the mandate is now on the independent institutions like the EACC, and the independence then means that he cannot interfere with those. So what else do we want him to do? What are you and Joseph Nyaga going to do in terms of structure?
We have looked at structures of several government agencies, including the EACC. The EACC can investigate corruption, but it has no prosecutorial powers. After investigating, it hands over these files to the DPP. So either we dismantle the anti-corruption commission and allow the CID to do the investigation, which is the police, of course, do the investigation, give it more resources so that it can effectively handle investigation, and then also mandate the DPP to do a thorough job in prosecuting these anti-corruption cases. Corruption is not only carried out by the small fish. We know the big fish, very big fishes in this country. Everybody knows them. They are very corrupt. For example, Michelle, even if, where I come from, we eat a lot of chicken. Somebody has called himself a hustler, having sold some chicken. If we sold all the chickens in this country, you won't be able to buy these billions of worth of property just out of selling chicken.
Right.
So we know there have been some corruption somewhere, and somebody knows where these monies are coming from, but he doesn't want to come out clean. We will go after corrupt cartels in our government.
Do you know those corrupt cartels?
Well, I don't have the privilege to understand what's happening behind the scenes in Anti-Corruption Commission when they're investigating. Once we get into government, we'll have access to this information, and we'll drop the axe as quickly as possible.
All right, let's focus on something else other than corruption. 3 key pledges. What is your second pledge?
Number 1, inclusivity. We want every Kenyan to feel included in the running of the affairs of this country. This country is not just about 2 individuals. This country is not just about 2 families. This country is not just about 2 groups of people. This country is about 45 million Kenyans. We want to include everybody in the management of the affairs of this country. That's number 1. Number 2, very key to us, integrity. If you have even a single spot of mismanagement of public affairs, we don't need you in government. You will not come even 100 meters close to a government office in terms of serving the people. We will make sure that whoever works in our government has that integrity to serve the people of this country.
When you talk about inclusivity, what do you mean, and what are you doing to achieve this?
For example, number 1, the current government, we are aware that several people, a group of people from certain regions, are the ones who are occupying majority of the positions in government. There are some groups in this country, for example, the Nubians, for example, the Ogieks, the Turkanas, name them. These people have not been properly represented in the current government. Boranas. We have people in this country who are very competent, but because politically their numbers are very small, they do not matter in government appointments. That is something we intend to look at very seriously, and especially basing on somebody's merit, qualifications, academic, professional, and lack of scandals in the past.
All right. And one of the constituencies that most political parties and independents are really focusing on now is the youth. What is your plan for the youth, especially when it comes to peaceful participation in elections?
Number one, you cannot organize, like Martin Luther one time said, it's impossible to organize a man on a hungry stomach. Now, here it is. Somebody is leaving college, has stayed home for about a couple of months, a couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. He doesn't have a job. Our intention is to make sure that when people are graduating from the university, there is a transitional process where they earn a source of living for them to be able to become responsible taxpayers in this country. Now, in the absence of a source of revenue, it's not easy for these people to be peaceful all the time because they got to earn a living. Now, look, for example, right now, this country has been blessed with a very tremendous, very beautiful weather. We import a lot of things outside of this country. For example, all of us, we consume cooking oil. Where do we get the palm oil from? We import this palm oil. But the tropics, the temperatures in this country, the weather in this country allows us to be able to locally produce the palm oil and bring back those jobs that we are taking outside. 2 million jobs from, we are taking outside. If we brought back these 2 million jobs, we would be able to hire more Kenyans and create more jobs for these people. Number two, somebody is graduating from the university. He went to school, like I did, for example. You go to school, your father has sold a piece of land, you've gone to school, and then after you graduate, you realize that you are starting a family, you don't have a source of income, your kids are going to school, you sell another piece of land, you take your kids to school. This cycle has to stop. But somebody has to put a brake on this, and that's where we come in, and we want to ensure that anybody leaving college must have a source of income for them to support their families.
All right.
And that also works on reducing the cost of living.
Great promises and pledges and really strategies on how to achieve those. But let's speak about the independent factor for a moment, because many have said this is a two-horse race between NASA and Jubilee. Independent candidates like yourselves do not agree to that. But just looking at the situation on the ground, every day on the media we have NASA and Jubilee campaigns. What is your campaign strategy? Are you visible enough in your view?
I'll answer your questions this way. Number one, for somebody to say that there is a two-horse race, that person actually does not understand the challenges Kenyans are facing. If Jubilee has failed to answer the aspirations of Kenyans, NASA people, all the principals in NASA have been in government one time or another. They were not able to deliver when they were in government. Jubilee has failed to deliver when it is in government. It's coming forth promising. For example, Michelle, somebody promised the Kenyans that they were going to be building 5 stadia in 5 years. They were unable to build these 5 stadiums in 5 years. Then he comes in and starts telling us they're going to do 9 stadiums in 3 months. I mean, Kenyans can see through all these things. And another thing, in 2010, there was a Minister for Agriculture in this country. The Minister for Agriculture in this country is the current deputy. By then, the Minister for Agriculture in 2010 was the man who is currently the deputy president when we had the food crisis.
Right.
Now, this time round, the Minister for Agriculture was the best man for the current deputy president. We are again experiencing the food crisis. These people have no solutions for our problems. They'll spend time pinpointing the shortfalls on the other end, yet Kenyans want a proper progressive government to serve their needs. It's for that reason that we think Kenyans will be best served by a government that listens to them and provides solutions without the impediments of scandals, corruption deals, whatever it is that we can avoid to run this government fairly. Now, as independent candidates, we go back. Why did Kenya become independent? Because there was colonialism that was oppressing Kenyans. When we were in a single-party state, Kenyans argued for second liberation because the single-party state was dictating to Kenyans, oppressing Kenyans. They call it second liberation. Right now, the parties have been oppressing the Kenyans to the extent that you do what somebody who is a senior guy, party leader, whoever it is, wants in the party. But most Kenyans now understand that for us to be free from that kind of oppression, you got to speak your mind, obey the law, do what is right, and serve Kenyans. And it's for that reason the majority of Kenyans have decided being independent is the nature of the day for us as Kenyans.
Now, at the end of the day, you are running for a national position.
Yes.
How well would you say you identify with the person at the grassroots? Do you have that nationwide appeal, national appeal?
Is the price of food too expensive? Yes, it is. Do we believe we can change that? Yes, we can. Yes, we believe that. And that means that already we have people who realize that the only solution that can be provided to solve their problems is coming from the independent candidates who are free and blatant enough to speak the truth and address the facts as they are without fearing to offend the party leaders in one way or another. And for that reason, we are appealing to the people on the ground to make sure that we sell our message to them and they are able to connect with what we are selling.
Right.
To them. Yes.
And finally, just when we began, you mentioned that you were 39 years old.
Yes.
That's rather young, so to speak. What would you say is the place of the youth in the current political dispensation?
Number one, they have been sidelined in the current government. They have been sidelined in previous governments. And for us to be able to get the youth involved, this means, number one, government appointments must also consider the youths. Leading several corporations, the youths must be involved. We must involve the youth even in these particular campaigns. You spoke about the violence. Violence is not done by old people, it's done by young people. But these young people need jobs. Unless you give them the jobs, they will not be able to stay at home and without a source of living. So as the youths in this country, what we only are asking and we will deliver as a government is make sure we provide jobs, we make credit facilities available to the people, especially those ones who are living in colleges, because they'll ask you provide collateral for a particular loan. You're a 23-year-old guy, you've just graduated from the university, you don't have a piece of land, you are not rich enough to have several vehicles, so you will not provide collateral for a financial product. But we want, as a government, having the youthful deputy president in position to provide a soft landing for these graduates, for these college leavers, for these high school leavers who are able to start small businesses, and we empower them to be able to support themselves.
All right. Let's take a call. We have Ali Yusuf calling in from Nairobi. Ali, good morning. What is your question or comment?
Thank you, Michelle.
Go ahead.
My question is actually to this person is that, Kenyans currently are complaining about the heightened cost of living. When he will get to power, we want to know how he will address the heightened cost of living and the skyrocketing of the basic commodities in this country. Secondly,
yes,
we've seen him, he has served in so many positions. He's been a long-term legislator, Joseph Nyaga. What is this one thing that he has done for this country that we can trust him with our votes?
All right. Thank you so much. That is Ali calling in from Nairobi. And very pertinent questions they're being asked. So first of all, he is asking the cost of food. How exactly are you going to address that situation?
Number one, the cost of food, the prices go up. Number one, because of corruption. That's number one. Number two, the cost of production. If we're going to increase the price of the cost of electricity, the cost of fuel is going up, transportation costs are going up, that means it boils down to the cost of food going up. So for us to be able to address that, number one, like I said before, point number one, fight corruption, kill corruption, take corruption down, and the price of commodities will come down. Improve infrastructure, lower the tariffs in terms of energy, so that now the production cost goes lower. Ultimately, the cost of commodities also becomes lower. The common man will be able to afford this food in that regard. Then number two, he's asking about what Joe Nyaga.
What has Joe Nyaga done for Kenya that Kenyans can entrust him with their vote?
One way or another, every Kenyan in this country is involved in one cooperative, one circle or another. Joe Nyaga is known for having been, the time he was the Minister for Cooperatives, This is the time he set the ground for everybody doing the table banking, circles, contributing, helping one another, merry-go-rounds. These are things that are a brainchild of Joe Nyaga when he was in government. And why did he do this? Because he believed that most people lacked the ability to provide collateral for financing. And because of that inability to provide collateral for financing, what he decided was, let's set up circles so that these circles in a group, they can help people access credit facilities for them to start small businesses, for them to be able to improve their lifestyles, do some little investments without the requirement by several banks that are required to provide collateral. So in short, what Joe Nyaga has done, he has spent time looking at what are the needs of the common man who cannot compete at the same level with the bigger people, the rich people, the people from the suburbs. And he developed a solution to address those issues right away from the cooperatives, whether somebody is in Ngarisha in Bungoma, somebody is in Dumishan, maybe in Meru, or somebody is in Mombasa. These circles are the ones that have helped, whether border circles, matatu circles. These things came on board when Joe Nyaga was Minister for Cooperatives, and that alone is an integral part of our economy.
All right, let's have your final comments, especially to Kenyans, of course, who you are asking to vote for you. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, there's 4 presidential candidates. And the question is, it is not a 2-horse race, as you say, but what gives you and Joseph Nyaga an advantage over the other independent presidential candidates?
Number one, there are 8 presidential candidates. I thought you said 4, but I think there are 4 presidential candidates. 8 presidential candidates are actually, excuse me. Out of all these 8 presidential candidates, the only person who has the requisite experience to run government and knows the policy structures that have been designed by our very able civil service is Joe Nyaga. The only person who knows these and has the political goodwill to execute solutions to these problems is Joe Nyaga. The only person who knows what needs to be done when and how is Joe Nyaga. And it is a man who is known to speak his mind, to do what is right, even if the community around him could say that maybe he's going against their will. But then the thing is, he speaks his mind, does what's right for this country, and history speaks for itself.
All right.
I think we are prepared to run this country in the most competent way possible.
We wish you all the best.
Thank you
Moses Barago, running mate to independent presidential candidate Joseph Nyaga, on a candid conversation here on Weekend Express.